The deep space vessel Horizon glided through the dark emptiness, its engines humming quietly as Captain Minho Park stood on the command deck. His eyes narrowed as he studied the strange ship ahead of them. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. Its hull curved in odd angles with symbols etched across its surface, and parts of it were torn open, revealing damaged systems inside. "What do you make of it, Ju?" Park asked, turning to his science officer. Science Officer Ju Kim looked up from her scanner, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her instruments. "The ship's power systems are failing, Captain, and I'm detecting life forms inside. At least 30 of them. Their vital signs suggest they're in distress." Park nodded, his decision already made. "Open a communication channel." "Channel open, sir," responded Communications Officer Doyun, his fingers moving swiftly across his console. Park cleared his throat. "This is Captain Minho Park of the Earth vessel Horizon *. We've detected your distress. Do you require assistance?" For several long moments, only static answered them. Then the main screen flickered to life, showing a slender, pale blue being with large, almond-shaped eyes. Its skin seemed to shimmer slightly, and it had 4 long fingers on each hand. "We receive you," the alien said, its voice translated through the ship's computer. "I am Elon of the Azuri people. We thank you for your aid. Our ship will not last much longer." Over the next few hours, the Horizon crew worked to help the damaged vessel. Once the Azuri were safely brought aboard, Elon told their story in the ship's conference room. The alien's hands trembled as it spoke. "We were once many worlds," Elon explained. "The Azuri built great cities and studied the stars for thousands of years. Then the Krell found us." Park leaned forward. "The Krell." "The Dominion," Elon said, a shudder passing through its slender frame. "They come from a harsh world, and they believe all other life exists to serve them. They hunt us across the stars. They take our resources, enslave our people, and kill any who stand against them." The crew exchanged worried glances as Elon continued. "We are the last free ship of our kind. We have been running for what you would call 7 of your years." Captain Park made his decision quickly. The Horizon would escort the Azuri back to Earth. The United Earth Council met in emergency session, and after much debate, they agreed to offer the Azuri Sanctuary. A scientific outpost named Harmony was built on a small island in the Pacific Ocean, where human and Azuri scientists could work together. For 6 months, the partnership flourished. The Azuri shared technologies beyond human understanding, while humans helped the Azuri learn about Earth's diverse ecosystems. Captain Park visited often. His daughter Suma, a brilliant young physicist, had requested assignment to the outpost to work directly with the aliens. "They think differently than we do, Dad," Shumi told him during one visit, her eyes bright with excitement. "The way they understand energy fields could revolutionize our power systems." Park smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "Just be careful. We still don't know much about this galaxy." "The Azuri are peaceful," Shumi insisted, "and they've been nothing but helpful." "It's not them I'm worried about," Park said quietly. His fears proved correct sooner than anyone expected. On a quiet Tuesday morning, when the outpost was hosting a cultural exchange for children from both species, the attack came without warning. Later, investigation would show that a long-range Krell scout had detected the Azuri energy signatures and called in a strike force. The Krell ships appeared suddenly, jamming all outgoing communications except for one, a broadcast signal they themselves sent out across all frequencies. They wanted the galaxy to see what happened to those who defied them. In horror, Earth watched as armored soldiers with too many limbs and brutal weapons stormed the outpost. The cameras captured everything. Scientists pleading for mercy. Children, human and Azuri, huddled together in fear. The methodical executions that followed. Captain Park, aboard the Horizon in orbit around Mars, watched helplessly as the broadcast showed his daughter Sumi standing protectively in front of a group of Azuri children. Her face showed no fear, only determination. "You don't have to do this," she said to the Krell commander. "We can talk." The energy blast cut her words short. Park's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The broadcast continued for 23 minutes. When it ended, a Krell commander appeared on screen. Its face was covered in bony plates, its 4 eyes cold and without emotion. "Let this serve as warning to all who defy the Dominion," it said simply. "The Azuri are our property. Those who harbor them share their fate." The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, Captain Park slowly stood. Tears streamed down his face, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Send word to Earth Command," he ordered. Tell them humanity has just witnessed an act of war." Around the world, billions of humans had watched the massacre. In homes and offices, on streets and in schools, the reaction was the same: shock giving way to grief, and grief burning into something else entirely. Something the Krell had never encountered in all their years of conquest. As night fell across Earth, leaders of nations that had been enemies for centuries began urgent communications with one another. Military commanders reviewed their forces. Scientists opened classified files on weapons development. The Krell had mistaken humanity's peaceful contact with the Azuri for weakness. They believed their display of brutality would frighten humans into submission. They were wrong. For 3 days, Earth stood still. Flags hung at half-mast. Public spaces fell silent. People gathered in parks and squares, laying flowers and lighting candles for those lost at Outpost Harmony. The broadcasts played again and again on news channels, edited to remove the worst violence, but still showing enough that no one could look away. On the morning of the 4th day, something changed. Admiral Junho Lee walked slowly to the podium in the United Earth Council chamber. The room was packed. Every nation had sent its highest officials. Lee was not a tall man, but as he stood before the world's leaders, he seemed to grow in stature. His uniform was crisp, his face lined with grief but clear-eyed. 3 days ago, we witnessed evil, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. We saw what the Krell Dominion does to those who stand in their way. We saw them murder our children. He paused, letting the words sink in. Now they will witness our response. The chamber erupted in applause. When it quieted, Lee continued, "For too long, humanity has fought itself. Today, we have a common enemy. One that believes we will cower in fear after their display of brutality." His eyes moved from face to face. "They do not understand humans." The resolution passed unanimously. Earth would go to war. Not in panic, not in blind rage, but with cold, calculated purpose. Within days, military commander Yuna Kang established a global manufacturing network. Nations that had jealously guarded their military secrets now shared everything. Factories that made cars now produced armor plating. Shipyards that had built luxury space cruisers were retooled for warships. "Every hour counts," Kang told her international team as they reviewed production targets. "The Krell believe they have all the time in the world to come finish what they started. We must be ready before they return." In the secure research facility beneath Mount Hala, Dr. Hyun Choi worked alongside the Azuri engineer Tibble. The alien's 4-fingered hands moved with incredible precision across the holographic displays. "Your species understands physics differently than mine," Tuttle said, its voice soft through the translator. "But together, we may create something the Krell cannot counter." Dr. Choi nodded, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Show me again how your people visualize dimensional space." For weeks they worked without rest, testing and failing and testing again. Then one night, as most of the facility slept, a test engine in their lab flickered and disappeared. It worked. Dr. Choi shouted, checking his instruments. "It's still there, but phased partially out of normal space." Tyval's skin rippled with blue light, an Azuri expression of joy. "The Phantom Drive lives." The breakthrough changed everything. Ships equipped with the Phantom Drive could move unseen, strike without warning, and escape before the enemy could respond. Earth now had a weapon the Krell had never encountered. 6 months after the massacre, Earth's first battle fleet gathered in orbit. 20 ships, each carrying the new Phantom Drive. Their hulls were black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Their weapon systems were untested in real combat, but powerful in simulations. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship, *Retribution*, addressing the crews of all 20 vessels. The Krell believe themselves the masters of this galaxy, he said. They have conquered 17 species across hundreds of worlds. They expect us to hide, to beg for mercy when they return. He paused, looking at the assembled officers on his bridge. They expect us to behave like every other species they have crushed beneath their feet. They have never faced humans before. Captain Minho Park, now commanding the heavy cruiser Horizon's Vengeance felt a cold resolve as he listened. The image of his daughter Suma's final moments never left him. But now, that pain had purpose. The fleet jumped to the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, where intelligence from the surviving Azuri indicated a Krell outpost had been established. This would be the first test of human weapons against Krell defenses. Phantom Drives engage, ordered Admiral Lee. Operation Nemesis begins now. The human ships phased, becoming ghostly translucent as they approached the Krell station. The enemy had no warning until the first shots fired, precision strikes that disabled their communication arrays and weapon systems. Park watched from his command chair as the Krell scrambled fighters in response. Their tactics were organized but predictable. Clearly, they were used to fighting enemies who followed expected patterns. They've never had to adapt, Park said to his first officer. Let's show them something new. The human ships moved in patterns the Krell couldn't anticipate, accelerating when they should retreat, attacking from impossible angles as the Phantom Drives allowed them to slip between dimensions. The Krell station's defenses fell within minutes. Admiral Lee's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. Ground teams deploy. Secure any intelligence data. No unnecessary casualties. We take prisoners if they surrender. The battle ended in just under 40 minutes. The Krell station was captured intact. Not a single human ship was lost, though 3 had sustained minor damage. Before leaving the system, Admiral Lee ordered a message broadcast on all frequencies the Krell used, knowing it would reach their central command. The message was simple, sent in the Krell language and repeated in English. For Outpost Harmony. As the fleet jumped back to Earth, bringing prisoners and valuable intelligence data, news of the victory spread across human colonies and outposts. For the first time since the massacre, people felt something other than grief. They felt hope. In his private quarters, Admiral Lee reviewed the battle recordings. The Krell had fought well, but without imagination. They had power but lacked adaptability. They'd been the strongest for too long, he murmured to himself. They'd forgotten how to face a real challenge. Across the stars, in the heart of Krell territory, the message reached the Emperor's chambers. For the first time in generations, uncertainty entered the minds of the Dominion's leaders. The hunt had become a war. For 3 days, Earth stood still. People gathered in town squares and parks, holding candles and pictures of those lost at Outpost Harmony. Videos of the attack played on screens around the world. Children asked why the aliens had hurt people who only wanted to help. Parents had no good answers. On the 4th day, something changed. The grief remained, but now it had a purpose. Admiral Junho Lee walked into the United Earth Council chamber and looked at the gathered leaders. His uniform was neat, his face tired but determined. He took a breath and began to speak. 3 days ago, we witnessed evil, he said, his voice strong and clear. Now they will witness our response. The room, which had been quiet, suddenly filled with noise as people stood and clapped. Nations that had fought each other for centuries now stood together. When Lee finished his speech, the vote was quick. Earth would fight back. Military Commander Yuna Kang moved fast. She had files of plans ready by the next morning. Within a week, factories across the world changed what they made. Car plants now built armor plating. Toy makers produced medical supplies. Shipyards that once built cruise liners for the wealthy now constructed warships. "We move as one," Kang told factory leaders during a global meeting. "One planet, one purpose." Workers took extra shifts without complaint. Engineers shared secrets they had once hidden. Money that nations had saved for wars with each other now funded the defense of Earth. In a lab deep under the ocean, Dr. Hyun Choi worked with the Azuri engineer Tivil. The aliens' blue hands moved quickly over strange devices as they talked. "Your people think of space as empty," Tivil said. "My people see it as full of hidden paths." Dr. Choi nodded, pushing his glasses up as he studied the aliens' drawings. "So if we bend the light here." They worked day and night. Other scientists came to help, bringing coffee and ideas. They failed many times. Machines broke. Theories proved wrong. But they kept trying. Then one night, when most people were asleep, a small test unit in their lab flickered and became see-through. It was still there, but not fully in normal space. "It works," shouted Dr. Choi, spilling his coffee. Tyvil's skin glowed with joy. The Phantom Drive lives. The new drive changed everything. Ships with the Phantom Drive could move without being seen. They could attack and leave before the enemy knew what happened. Earth now had a way to fight the much stronger Krell. 6 months after the attack on Harmony, 20 ships waited in orbit around Earth. They were black and sleek, built for speed and surprise. Each carried the new Phantom Drive. Their weapons were the best Earth could make. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the largest ship, named Retribution *. He looked at the crew around him. "Today we send a message," he said, "not just to the Krell, but to all who would harm the innocent. Humanity stands against tyranny." Captain Minho Park sat in the command chair of his own ship, the Horizon's Vengeance *. He thought of his daughter Suma's face as she died protecting Azuri children. Her picture was in his pocket. Her memory gave him strength. "Phantom Drives ready," Park told his crew. "Let's show them what humans can do." The ships jumped to Proxima Centauri, where Azuri survivors had told them a Krell base was located. As they approached, the Phantom Drives engaged. The human ships became ghostly, hard to see and impossible to target. The Krell had no warning until the first shots hit their communication towers. Their ships tried to respond, but they couldn't find targets to shoot at. The human vessels moved in strange patterns, appearing and disappearing. "They're confused," Park said to his first officer. "They've never fought an enemy who could do this." The battle lasted less than an hour. The Krell station fell without a single human ship lost. Teams went inside to gather information and take prisoners. Before leaving, Admiral Lee sent a message on all Krell channels. It was short but clear. "For Outpost Harmony." As the fleet returned to Earth, news of the victory spread. People cheered in the streets. For the first time since the massacre, they felt hope. In his room that night, Admiral Lee watched recordings of the battle. The Krell had powerful weapons but fought in old ways. They weren't used to being surprised. "They've been the strongest for too long," he said quietly. "They've forgotten what it's like to be challenged." Across the stars, in the heart of Krell space, the Emperor received the news of defeat. For the first time in many years, the Krell felt fear. What started as a hunt had become a war. Krell Commander Vex stood before the High Council, his armor still bearing scorch marks from the recent battle. 6 massive Krell leaders stared down at him from their raised platforms. The chamber was dark, lit only by red lights that made their bony faceplates look like they were covered in blood. "Explain your failure," said the first voice, the oldest of the counselors. Vex straightened his back. "The humans do not fight like any species we have ever encountered. They are mammals from a single planet," hissed the second voice. "How can they stand against the Dominion?" Vex activated a holographic display showing battle footage. "They fight differently," he explained, pointing to a sequence where human ships moved in seemingly random patterns. "They sacrifice their own vessels to protect weaker allies. They attack when retreat would be logical. They use their phantom drive technology to appear from nowhere." He paused the footage on an image of a human ship taking a direct hit meant for an Ezuri vessel. "They are unpredictable." The council chamber filled with angry muttering. The Krell had conquered 17 species across 200 years of expansion. None had ever counterattacked with such ferocity. None had liberated Krell-held worlds. "The Emperor must be informed," said the first voice finally. Far from the council chamber, on the edge of Krell space, Commander Geo Ryu sat on the bridge of his flagship, the Silent Strike Asterisk. His ghost fleet, named for their ability to appear and disappear using the phantom drive, prepared for their next mission. "All ships ready," Commander reported his second-in-command, Subin. Ryu nodded, studying the holographic display of the Krell prison world below. The planet Nexus V held thousands of slaves from 3 different species, all forced to mine valuable minerals for the Krell war machine. "Remember," Ryu told his crew, "speed is everything. We have 30 minutes to break the security systems, free the prisoners, and evacuate before Krell reinforcements arrive." The Ghost Fleet phased into normal space directly above the main mining complex. Before the Krell guards could sound alarms, human fighters had already disabled the communication towers. Dropships landed in the prison yards. Lieutenant Dahi Kim led the first team into the mines. The air was thick with methane, toxic to humans, but necessary for the Volari prisoners. Kim's team wore breathing masks as they moved through the tunnels, breaking locks and disabling slave collars. "You are free," Kim told the first group of Volari they found, cloud-like beings that floated in the methane-rich air. "We come from Earth. We fight the Krell. Will you come with us?" The Volari were suspicious at first. No species had ever helped them before. But as more mines were opened, more slaves freed, they began to understand. These humans were different. In another section, Captain Taeyun broke open crystal chambers holding the Enix, beings made of living crystal who communicated through light patterns. The Krell had kept them in darkness for decades, mining their natural crystal growths for weapons components. "The light has returned," flashed an elder Enix when Taeyun's team brought them to the surface. "We will join your fight." The third species, the amphibious Tellurians, were perhaps the most valuable find. Bigger than humans and incredibly strong, they had been bred by the Krell as labor for generations. They had never known freedom. "Why do you help us?" asked a Tellurian leader named Gorn as human medics treated wounds on his scaled back. "Because it's right," answered Ryu simply. The entire operation took 28 minutes. When Krell reinforcements arrived, they found empty mines and missing slaves. The Ghost Fleet was already gone, carrying thousands of freed beings to Earth space. 2 weeks later, representatives from all 3 species met with Admiral Lee and the Earth Council. The Volari High Speaker, a shimmering cloud named Mist, addressed the gathered leaders. "For generations, the Krell have taken whatever they wanted," Mist's translator spoke. "No one fought back. No one helped others. But humans understand something the Krell never will. Freedom is worth dying for." The alliance grew quickly. The Volari provided gas ships that could travel through nebulas no other vessel could navigate. The Enix shared their crystal technology that enhanced energy weapons. The Tellurians joined human crews, their strength and durability making them excellent fighters. In the following months, the Alliance liberated 7 more worlds. Each victory brought new allies, new technologies, new hope. The Krell began to lose ground for the first time in their history. Deep in the heart of Krell space, in a palace built from the bones of conquered worlds, the Emperor received the news of yet another defeat. He was ancient, even by Krell standards, with a massive body supported by 8 limbs and a face covered in ceremonial scars. "Impossible," he growled, crushing the datapad in one clawed hand. No species defies the Dominion. No alliance stands against our might. His advisors shifted nervously. None wanted to speak the truth, that the war was not going well, that more colonies fell each day, that slaves everywhere whispered the word human like a prayer. The Emperor rose to his full height, towering over his council. Enough of this measured response. Deploy the world burners to human colonies. Target their outposts, their stations, their allies. The first voice stepped forward. Emperor, the world burners have not been used since the Purge Wars. Their deployment would violate. The Emperor's claw closed around the first voice's throat. Do I make myself clear? Break their will. Burn their worlds. Make them understand what it means to challenge the Dominion. As the orders went out, Commander Ryu's Ghost Fleet was already planning their next strike. They did not know about the world burners, weapons capable of igniting a planet's atmosphere. They did not know that the war was about to enter a new, more terrible phase. But they would learn soon enough. And when they did, humanity would face its greatest test. The night sky over New Horizon Colony blazed with unnatural light. Millions of people looked up in horror as the Krell world burners moved into position. These massive ships, rarely used even by the Krell, carried weapons designed for a single purpose: to render planets uninhabitable. Governor Jimin stood in the colony's control center, watching helplessly as the evacuation efforts failed. There were too many people, too few ships, and far too little time. We need another hour, she told her staff, her voice steady despite her fear. Just one more hour to get the children out. But the Krell gave them no time at all. The world burners fired in perfect unison, their energy beams piercing the atmosphere and igniting the very air. The firestorm spread with impossible speed, consuming everything it touched. New Horizon fell in hours. 13 million lives extinguished in a single day. The news reached Earth as Mars came under siege. The Red Planet's defense grid, built after the first Krell attacks, held against the initial assault, but more enemy ships arrived each hour. Admiral Lee stood in Earth Command Center, surrounded by tired officers and grim-faced leaders. The holographic display showed Krell forces advancing across the solar system. How long can Mars hold? Asked President Hana Kim. 2 days, maybe 3, replied Defense Minister Taewoo. But Earth is their real target. As if confirming his words, the first Krell ships appeared in Earth orbit. The orbital defense platforms engaged immediately, filling near space with energy beams and missile fire. The sky darkened with smoke and debris from destroyed ships, both human and Krell. From his office window in Seoul, Dr. Jae-hee Park watched the flashes of battle above. Her lab coat was stained with coffee, her eyes red from lack of sleep. For months she had worked on a weapon she hoped would never be used. Her phone rang. It was Admiral Lee himself. "The Sunforge," he said without greeting. "Is it operational?" Park closed her eyes briefly. "Yes. But Admiral, I need you at Command Center. Now." The Sunforge was humanity's darkest secret, a weapon capable of inducing stellar collapse. It could destroy not just a planet, but an entire star system. One deployment would kill billions. As Park's transport rushed through the crowded streets, another mission was reaching its end. Intelligence officer Yunho Sung had infiltrated Krell territory weeks earlier, posing as a slave trader. His real purpose, to locate the Krell homeworld. For centuries, the Krell had hidden their origin world, ruling their empire from shifting locations. No one knew where they had evolved, where their leaders truly lived. Sung had worked his way deeper into Krell space, gathering scraps of information, following whispers. He knew he would never return to Earth. His only goal was to send the coordinates before he died. In a dingy bar on a Krell trading station, he finally heard what he needed. A drunk Krell officer boasting about his upcoming rotation to the heart of all. Using a stolen access terminal, Sung broke through layers of security to confirm what he suspected. He had found it, the Krell homeworld. The alarm sounded seconds after he sent the encrypted message to Earth. Krell security forces surrounded him. Sung smiled as he swallowed the poison capsule hidden in his tooth. His last thought was of home. Back on Earth, Admiral Lee received Sung's transmission during the third day of continuous orbital battle. Earth's defenses were holding, but barely. More Krell ships arrived each hour. Lee called an emergency meeting of the Earth Council. Dr. Park arrived just as it began, carrying a small case containing the Sunforge activation codes. "We have located the Krell homeworld," Lee announced to the stunned council members. "Intelligence Officer Sung sacrificed his life to send us these coordinates." A holographic map appeared, showing a star system deep in Krell territory. The planet was massive, its surface covered in sprawling cities. "This is our chance," Lee continued. "One strike at their heart could end this war." Dr. Park stepped forward, placing her case on the table. "The Sunforge is ready," she said quietly, "but you must understand what it will do. It won't just destroy their military. It will kill every living thing in that system. Billions of beings, soldiers, civilians, slaves, children." She looked around the room. "We can end this war," she told the grim-faced council members. "But at what cost to our humanity?" Silence fell over the chamber. Outside, the sky flashed with the light of battle. President Kim spoke first. "What are our other options?" "A conventional assault would fail," Lee said honestly. "Their homeworld will be too heavily defended." "But we have the Phantom Drive," argued Minister Taewoo. "We could approach unseen." Park nodded slowly. "It's possible. We could deliver a smaller strike force, target their leadership rather than destroy the entire planet." For hours they debated, even as the battle raged above them. Reports came in of Krell forces landing in remote areas. The defense grid was failing. Finally, Admiral Lee stood and walked to the main display. He input commands, bringing up a new hologram, Earth's remaining military forces. "We have one chance," he said. "Operation Thunderclap. Everything we have. One final strike at their heart." He turned to the council. "Not with the Sunforge. With our ships, our people. We'll use the Phantom Drive to jump directly into their home system. While most of our fleet engages their defenses, a small team will target the Emperor and ruling council." "It's a suicide mission," said President Kim softly. Lee nodded. "Yes, but it gives us a chance to end this war without becoming like them, without destroying everything they are." Dr. Park closed the case containing the Sunforge codes. "I'll come with you," she said. "If this fails, if there's no other choice." She didn't finish the sentence. As the council approved the plan, Lee looked again at the battle raging outside. The Krell believed humans would break under pressure, would choose surrender over extinction. They had never understood what made humanity different, not just the will to fight, but the will to hold on to their humanity even in the darkest hour. Operation Thunderclap would launch in 12 hours. Everything would be risked on one final gamble. The combined fleet gathered at the edge of Krell space. 300 ships, human vessels alongside Volari cloud ships, crystalline Anx cruisers, and heavy Tellurian carriers. They represented the last hope of the Alliance. If they failed here, Earth would surely fall. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of the Retribution *, watching as captains reported their readiness. His uniform was clean and pressed despite days without proper rest. "All ships accounted for," reported his second-in-command. "Phantom drives charged and ready." Lee nodded. "Send the final message to Earth." The message was brief. "Operation Thunderclap commencing. If we do not return, activate Defense Plan Omega." He didn't mention that Defense Plan Omega included the deployment of the Sunforge, the weapon of last resort. Lee opened a channel to the entire fleet. "We know what we face. The Krell homeworld will be defended by their strongest forces. Many of us will not return." He paused, looking at the tired faces of his crew. "But today, we fight not just for Earth, but for every world that has suffered under Krell rule. For Earth, for harmony, For all free beings. A cheer rose across all channels. Phantom drives engage, commanded Lee. Jump in 3, 2, 1. The fleet vanished, reappearing moments later in the heart of the Krell home system. The planet below was massive, its surface covered with sprawling cities and military bases, and around it waited the Emperor's guard fleet, over 500 warships arranged in perfect formation. The battle began instantly. Krell ships moved to surround the Alliance fleet, their weapons already firing. Alliance vessels scattered into pre-planned attack groups, using the phantom drives to appear and disappear across the battlefield. Captain Minho Park commanded the Horizon's Vengeance at the front line. Focus fire on their lead destroyers, he ordered. Clear a path for the strike team. His ship took heavy damage as it deliberately drew fire away from a group of smaller, faster vessels carrying boarding teams. The shields failed, hull breaches reported on 3 decks. Captain, we can't hold much longer, warned his damage control officer. Park nodded grimly. We hold as long as needed. Across the battlefield, the Volari cloud ships released swirling gas formations that confused Krell targeting systems. The crystalline vessels of the NX focused sunlight into devastating energy beams. Tellurian bombers, piloted by the massive amphibious beings, crashed through Krell fighter screens. Slowly, a path opened toward the planet below. The Retribution took advantage immediately, diving toward the surface with a small escort of ships. Krell defenses tracked them, massive ground-based weapons firing into the sky. 2 escort ships exploded, then a third. The bridge of the Retribution shook violently as a direct hit breached the hull. Admiral Lee was thrown against a console, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. He wiped it away, refusing medical attention. Continue approach, he ordered. Land at the designated coordinates. The ship shuddered again as they entered the atmosphere. Fire surrounded the viewport as damaged systems failed throughout the vessel. Somehow, the pilot managed to bring them down less than a kilometer from the Emperor's citadel, a massive black stone structure rising like a mountain from the Krell capital. Strike team, with me, Lee commanded, checking his weapon. Dr. Park stood beside him, carrying a small case, the portable Sunforge detonator. It was their last resort. The team fought their way through the streets, facing waves of Krell defenders. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but the humans moved with desperate speed. Tellurian allies in the strike team used their massive strength to clear barricades and break through defensive positions. Finally, they'd reached the citadel gates. Explosives blew open the entrance. The remaining members of the strike team, less than half of those who had landed, charged inside. In the orbital battle above, things were going badly. Alliance ships were falling one by one, though they made the Krell pay dearly for each loss. Captain Park's vessel took a critical hit to the engines. We're losing containment, reported his engineer. 2 minutes to core breach. Park nodded calmly. Set course for their command carrier. Full speed. His crew understood. No one objected. The Horizon's Vengeance streaked toward the largest Krell ship, engines flaring with unstable energy. Inside the citadel, Admiral Lee led the survivors deeper, following the map provided by Officer Sung's final transmission. They fought through corridors and chambers, losing more people with each engagement. By the time they reached the throne room doors, only Lee, Dr. Park, and 3 others remained. Open it, Lee ordered. The massive doors swung open, revealing a vast chamber. At its center sat the Emperor, larger than any Krell they had seen before, with 8 armored limbs and a face covered in ritualistic scars. Around him stood his ruling council. You fight well, for prey, the Emperor's voice boomed. But your fleet dies above us. Your world will be next. Lee stepped forward. We are not prey. The Emperor laughed, a harsh clicking sound. You could have been slaves, he said, rising to his full height. You chose extinction. We chose freedom, Lee replied. Not just for ourselves. Dr. Park opened her case, revealing the Sunforge detonator. The Emperor recognized the technology immediately, his 4 eyes widening. "You would destroy an entire system?" he asked. "Kill billions, including yourselves?" Lee looked at the detonator, then at Dr. Park. In her eyes, he saw the same question he had been asking himself since the mission began. What were they fighting for? To survive, yes, but also to remain human. He shook his head slightly. Park closed the case. "No," Lee said. "We are not like you." The Emperor moved with surprising speed, striking Lee with a powerful limb. The Admiral fell, his weapon sliding across the floor. The Emperor loomed over him. At that moment, the palace shook violently. Above, Captain Park's ship had rammed the Krell command carrier, the core breach creating a massive explosion that disrupted the entire Krell fleet. The Alliance forces pressed their advantage immediately. The distraction was enough. The remaining strike team members fired, their shots hitting the Emperor's guards. Dr. Park helped Lee to his feet. Together, they faced the wounded Emperor. "Your reign is over," Lee told him. "Surrender, and your people will be spared." 1 year later, representatives from 37 species gathered on the rebuilt outpost Harmony. The station had been reconstructed on the same site where the massacre had occurred, now a place of healing rather than pain. Admiral Lee, still walking with a slight limp from his injuries, stood before the gathered delegates. Behind him, a memorial wall displayed the names of those lost in the original attack. As he finished his speech, he turned and placed his hand gently on one name. Sumi Park. The Galactic Concord was signed that day. Its first principle: the strong must protect, never exploit, the innocent. The Krell Empire was dismantled world by world, its slaves freed, its resources shared among the former subject worlds. As the ceremony ended, a Krell approached Lee, not the Emperor, who remained in custody, but a former war commander now serving as a peace delegate. "We never understood until we witnessed your mercy," the Krell said quietly. "It was greater than your wrath." Lee nodded silently as the stars shone overhead. The same stars that now watched over a galaxy forever changed by humanity's response to that first terrible loss.